It's that time of year again where I get to speak about music and some of my personal favorites and least favorites from last year. I'm not a music critique. I'd say I know more about filmmaking than I do about music production and writing, but I still like throwing my 2 cents in there and just kind of reflecting on the music that defied my 2024 and my personal picks and favorites for the year. I'm going to break this up into 3 sections. First, I'm going to give you some of the worst albums I heard last year. Then I'm going to talk about some honorable mentions very briefly. Then we talk about 20 to 11 of my list. And finally, I go into great detail on my top 10 and why they are there.
Anybody pissed off? Gotta make a drink then yours.
So starting us off, some of the worst albums I heard last year, there was quite a few that I thought were bad, but not awful. Just kind of, they had nothing interesting to say or do, and that's kind of why I excused them. But these ones were the bottom of the barrel, nothing creative about them, no vision whatsoever, and they don't work very well conceptually as an album. These picks are Y2K by Ice Spice, Eternal Take 2 by Lil Uzi Vert, Slut Pop Miami by Kim Petras, Case Dismissed by Babytron, Genre Sad Boy by MGK and Trippie Redd, CXOXO by Camila Cabello, 143 by Katy Perry, Vultures 1 and 2 by Kanye West, and finally the worst album I listened to last year was Dear Joe by Jax. I don't even recommend trying this one out of sheer interest, because that's what I did, and it's just embarrassing, and it's trying to be really edgy and memey, and one of the songs is about Jeffrey Epstein. Just fuck this album, and Jax, just retire, just don't make music anymore, please. Talking about my honorable mentions very briefly, we have Loss of Life by MGMT, Atavista by Childish Gambino, Wall of Eyes by The Smile, Fine Ho Stay by Flo Milli, Heat by Tovlo and SJ Lewis, Brat and It's Completely Different But Also Still Brat by Charli XCX, Britpop by AJ Cook, Orchides by Caliuchis, Garage Sale by Between Friends, and finally Older by Lizzie McAlpine. Let's talk about the top 20. This is a mixture of albums and EPs and mixtapes. I just like bundling them all together. It would be, I don't listen to enough music to warrant me making a separate list for mixtapes and EPs and then albums, so I just have everything kind of put together. This was one that lived up to the hype and more. I think it's the most interesting project that Future's put out in a while, and the production by Metro Boomin absolutely boosts it to that level that his past few projects were missing. Obviously, there's the Kendrick Lamar verse that started everything. What isn't there to like here? It's just a fun trap album, which quite frankly, I don't think we see enough of anymore, with a lot of people trying to copy styles of the likes of Playboi Carti or Kendrick, or, I mean, I'm not going to give him credit, but even Drake. At least he's doing something different. I'm not saying it's good, but at least he's experimenting. I'm a big fan of Immunity, I'm an even bigger fan of Sling, and Charm kind of puts those two albums together and makes this personally unique sound that works incredibly well in Clairo's favour. I saw her live a couple months ago and I got to see all the music live and it was a lot of fun, and I just think there's something very sweet and, well, not to do a pun, but charming about the music. ScHoolboy Q is another artist that I do listen to on occasion, but I think I've always been waiting for him to put out that project that I was just absolutely gonna love, and Blue Lips seems to be that project I've been asking for. My first initial listen, I wasn't really crazy about it, but as I've gone back and revisited it over and over again, I've realised that there is something very special about this, and the conversation about how great ScHoolboy Q truly is should absolutely be had. He offers a lot here and he brings a lot to the table. Childish Gambino, I owe a lot to him for shaping what has been a lot of the soundtrack to my adolescence. Camp hasn't exactly aged greatly, but I still think that Because the Internet and Awaken My Love are fantastic albums. And Bando Stone, although it is a bit messy and is probably my least favourite of the three, still offers quite a lot with a very experimental sound, some very weird samples that you wouldn't expect to work but actually fit in place very well, and just feels like a very bittersweet farewell to the Childish Gambino persona. Will we ever get the movie that was promised with this? Probably not. I had a lot of fun with what might be his last ever project, although I'm not happy that he cancelled like half of his tour. I didn't get to see any of it, but whatever.
I've named this one JPEG.
Another one who I owe a lot to, in the sense that I used to be crazy about JPEGMAFIA, although there is a big gap between the fact that he seems to be tarnishing somewhat of his reputation by proving that he is chronically online and can't take any criticism, but the music still sticks and is really great to listen to, with some absolutely fantastic production that no other artists are finding any way to replicate. It just hurts a little bit when you see him talking shit about people online, whether that's Earl Sweatshirt and The Alchemist, or him talking about how he hates white neo-Nazis but then happily goes off and collaborates with Kanye West. It's hard to understand, but I think this was a good album. Who up Greeping their shit right now? I fucking love this album, and I love Geordie Greep, and I think there's something so interestingly weird about this album and the music that he used to make with Black Midi. It almost itches your brain in a way with the certain chords and progressions that he does throughout all these songs, but it still finds a way to work incredibly well and feel good to the listener. I truly hope that he releases more music independently. As much as I loved Black Midi, I feel like his sound works so much better on his own. Another aggressive, fun rock album, which really feels refreshing in the genre. Obviously, there's lots of rock albums and metal albums that come out every year. To some degree, they all feel kind of plagiarized of each other. This one feels perfectly unique and fun, with songs like Tiny Bikini and You Should Not Be Doing That and Pigs. I just think it's great, and it kind of makes you want to go outside to the beach or something, which is so strange for a rock album, but that's just how it works. It's just fun, sexy club music by Shygirl. There's a remix album which was pretty good as well. I have to say that Shygirl is someone that is deeply underrated in the British rap / club scene, and it was great to see her live with Charli XCX. I think her music deserves to be heard by the masses. At 12, I have Cowboy Carter. It's so strange that they basically gave her like a pity award for album of the year just because they realized that they fucked up so many other times. I prefer Renaissance to Cowboy Carter, but there is still a lot on this that I can enjoy. It might be a little bloated in places, but it's certainly fun to hear Beyonce do her take on country music, whether that's covering something like Jolene or Blackbird, or just completely wild tracks like Levi Jeans or Yaya that have so much fun samples in them that you can't help but kind of jump around a bit. Beyonce's certainly someone that's never lost form, and like, not to start a war or anything, but it's kind of insane to me that people have this debate about who's the greater artist, Beyonce or Taylor Swift, when one of them is just so out of the league of everything, way ahead of so many other pop stars. This is honestly such a bleak album, and Vince has been known to find a deep rawness in his rap songs that other artists don't really dive into, and I feel like that's a reason why he's not so popular, because there is so much more depth between what he's talking about on these songs. And that goes back to the past few albums he's dropped these few years, where some people kind of don't like him. I think they are fantastic in their own right, and Vince is by far one of the most underrated people on the rap scene today. And here we are, my top 10 albums of 2024. I spent a lot of time kind of looking at this list and rearranging it, and there's maybe a few components for each album on why they're here. They have to have interesting production and great writing that doesn't feel overdone or like something I've heard a million times before in other stuff. They have to kind of work well as an album. And finally, the most important reason why any of these albums are in my top 10 is because they're fun and I listen to them all the time. There's something very special about them. I enjoy going back and listening to them front to back. I enjoy picking little songs and analysing little bits and pieces of them. And most importantly, they're just really fun to listen to and maybe go on a walk and just listen to them. So without further ado, here is my top 10. If you had told me that there would have been a YouTuber on this list, I would have been very shocked, and I would have asked you, is it true that KSI could possibly make something good? Of course he can't, he's an awful artist. Considering his fan base was all based on FIFA videos and people that were into that sort of content, stuff that I wasn't ever watching, and now he's making like this really abstract, experimental, sort of moody pop / grungy music. I have to say it's a step in the perfect direction. I loved his first album, I love this album, I think it might be an upgrade, and quite frankly I'm excited for the album that he's dropping later this year. Faye Webster is an artist that I only really got into with this album. I went back and listened to a bunch of her old stuff, and I even went to go and see her live for this album. Some of the production on these songs is so very simple, including that opening track, Thinking of You. They still feel very unique in their own perspective. I know there's lots of criticisms for this album, and people saying that her writing style is kind of a step down and it's far too simplistic, but to me, I think it works really well, and it still suits for a very fun listen. Denzel Curry is also just as consistent as an artist like Vince Staples, consistently putting out these albums that I wouldn't say are completely masterpieces or perfect, but they have a consistent level of great work put into them, and it's clear that Denzel has a very unique perspective and vision for every single one that he releases. and this one is no different. It's very simply just a mixtape, paying homage to a lot of 80s and 70s rap, and it works very well. It's a very quick album, and he did release a deluxe, which, to be completely honest, I think kind of takes away from some of the easy listening of it, but it's still a very good time. It's also full of lots of fun features like Tia Corine, A$AP Ferg, A$AP Rocky, Ski Mask, Juicy J, the types of people that you would maybe expect on a Denzel project, but also kind of surprised to see there. A complete surprise drop after Kendrick basically dominated for the entire year against Drake. It's no secret to anyone that I'm not exactly a big Drake fan. Even before all of that kicked off, I just don't particularly enjoy a lot of his music. Kendrick, on the other hand, I've been a big fan of since I was very young, and to see him come back with this album that is basically just a homage to West Coast rap is great. To me, this album feels like exactly what I thought Damn was going to be, which is an album I'm not exactly crazy for. But it just feels like he's kind of taking a step back and actually having fun again with the music that he's making, in comparison to something like Mr. Morale, where everything is very serious and the songwriting is so specific. It truthfully, the best way to describe it is, it feels like a victory lap, and a well-deserved one at that. Idols are a very strange band in the sense that their first few albums were absolutely generational, and then everyone kind of just stopped paying attention for a while. It's even weirder because that was when Kenny Beats came in to produce a lot of their music, which I'm a big fan of him, but I don't know what it was about those albums, they just didn't really hit the same. However, this feels like a perfect return to form, as they're continuing their progressive rock, but aiming it in different directions, where a lot of those first few albums were all about how much they hated Tories, and stuff like that, and the gammon heads in England. Now it feels like a direction more talking about a vulnerable side of the band members, something that was met on some of their previous albums, but was never fully fleshed out to a great degree. This is a fan favourite for me. I feel like it's no surprise to anyone that this album's here. It felt like everyone online was talking about this at one point last year. I mean, specifically during the summer. And yeah, I think it is a great project. Is it Charli's best? No way, she has at least 3 other projects that are miles better than this one. I do think Brat is a very good time, and it was kind of her ideal way to break into the mainstream, which to me is hilarious because Crash was always that album where she was actually attempting to do that, and then she kind of just realized that if she just tried even less and do kind of the bare minimum in some aspects, it would work. Did some of the Brat Summer stuff get outplayed? Yes. Is the whole persona a little bit annoying? Yes. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really affect the music for me. There's some songs on here that I absolutely adore, and I really wouldn't change anything about it. Another group that have kind of broken to the huge mainstream with their film coming out last year, which I did a video on and I love, and all of the stuff going on right now with their pro-Palestine and getting booted from festivals. There's a festival right next to where I live where they just got kicked off of it. Fine art feels so refreshing in a genre that quite literally has been milked to death. Also, it's very interesting to hear rappers speak in their native tongue. You know, their Irish rap isn't really a thing. They're kind of bringing in new interesting ways for rap music to be reflected on and be created, and I think it will influence a lot of people up and coming in the next few years, which I absolutely love. Another one which I really did not expect to land on this list, especially so high. I was a huge fan of her EP and her debut album, but that second album, Happier Than Ever, really didn't hit that well for me. I think it's kind of mediocre and a bit all over the place. However, Hit Me Hard and Soft feels like a true return to form for Billie. The songs flow well perfectly together, despite the fact many of them span across different genres completely. In a world where pop music is just so beaten to death, with new artists coming and going all the time and releasing stuff that quite frankly is embarrassing, like that Katy Perry project. But then you also have fun people in the pop sphere, like Billie Eilish or Charli or Sabrina Carpenter. They're finding ways to make it interesting and fun. It's great. It should come as no surprise that I am the biggest Tyler fanboy. He influenced my style, my taste in a lot of things. I mean, half my wardrobe's probably still golf, even though I don't wear a lot of it anymore, but Chromacopia feels like such a raw version of what people expect as a Tyler album. I mean, he says very early on into the album, fuck traditions, and that's clear in this. There's no double song on track 10, it wasn't a 2-year gap. It just kind of goes completely against all of the traditional things that you'd expect on an album from his, and that goes for the songwriting as well. A lot of this is so deep and personal, and it goes levels beyond some of the stuff that he was talking about in Igor, or even Wilshire on Call Me If You Get Lost. I wouldn't say this is Tyler's best, but if this is the direction he's going in, I think we're in for some very interesting music along the way. I also did see him live, and he is a fantastic performer and showman. Probably the best in the business right now. People say Travis, but those people are morons. Finally, at number 1, I feel like it's obvious. Magbay are a duo that I've been heavily invested in for the past 4 or 5 years, from them being very small to eventually, you know, they're not quite in the mainstream yet, but they're breaking through to it very soon, I can tell you that. I love this album, I love their first album, I love their EPs, I love everything about it. And when I talk about interesting pop music, I think they are front and center about what makes pop music interesting and how it can actually be fun again. From front to back, the album is like nothing you've heard before, and honestly it's just a fantastically unique time that I wouldn't even want to spoil anything for. I just recommend people listen to it. That is the top 20 and the honorable mentions and the bottom of the barrel. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I promise next week I'll be talking about films again. The music stuff is just a once in a blue moon sort of deal. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.